Zixtha had survived 3 different atmospheric re-entry scenarios, decoded the quantum mathematics behind faster-than-light travel, and once held his breath for 17 hours during a diplomatic mission to a world covered in toxic gases. None of that had prepared him for Sergeant Danny Martinez. "Listen up, people, and I use that term extremely loosely," Martinez announced to the assembled recruits, his boots squeaking against the polished floor of Camp Pendleton's newest barracks. His gaze swept across the formation, lingering on Zixtha with the kind of expression normally reserved for malfunctioning equipment. "We've got 8 weeks to turn you sorry sacks into something resembling soldiers. That includes our distinguished guests from the Galactic Assembly." Zixtha stood at attention, his 4 arms pressed rigidly against his torso, his crest feathers flattened in what his species considered a display of humility. Around him, 27 human recruits tried not to stare. 3 of them were failing. "Sir, I have reviewed the training protocols extensively," Zixtha offered, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into flawless English. "I am confident that my physiological advantages will compensate for any cultural—" "Did I ask you to speak, recruit?" Martinez's voice could have stripped paint. "No, sir." "Then shut your—" Martinez paused, eyeing Zixtha's trimandible mouth structure. "Whatever that is." The human recruit next to Zixtha, a lanky kid named Tyler Brennan, made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Martinez's head swiveled toward him like a targeting system acquiring a lock. "Something funny, Brennan?" "No, sir. Just cleared my throat, sir." "Your throat sounds defective. Get it checked at medical after we're done here." Martinez returned his attention to the group. "Now, the Earth Defense Infantry Force has decided, in its infinite wisdom, to integrate our alien allies into standard combat units. This is not a cultural exchange program. This is not sensitivity training. This is the military, and in the military, we care about exactly 3 things. Can you shoot, can you move, and can you not die stupid? Everything else is irrelevant." Zixtha absorbed this information, cataloguing it against the 73 different treatises on human military doctrine he'd memorized. The humans had a reputation across the galaxy, not for their technology, which lagged behind most spacefaring species by at least 2 centuries, but for their peculiar approach to problem-solving. The first week proved educational. Zixtha learned that human morning routines involved staggering amounts of a toxic stimulant called coffee, that their sleeping patterns defied all biological logic, and that the phrase, "trust me, bro," was not, in fact, a reliable indicator of trustworthiness. He also learned that his 4 arms, while theoretically advantageous, made push-ups a bureaucratic nightmare. "How many is that recruit?" Martinez demanded, looming over Zixtha's prone form. 47, sir." Zixtha's upper arms trembled. His lower arms were fine, but the symmetry was off. "I count 4 arms. That's 4 times the push-ups." "That is not." Zixtha caught himself. "Sir, that is not physiologically equivalent. The muscle distribution—" "Are you arguing with me?" "Sir, I'm merely presenting data that might inform your decision-making process." Brennan, doing push-ups nearby, made that throat-clearing sound again. This time, Martinez ignored it. "Tell you what, Zix, you can do regular push-ups like everyone else. But if you fail to keep up with the human recruits, you're going to explain to your government why their fancy 4-armed warrior couldn't hack it." Zixtha's crest feathers rose involuntarily, the Krell equivalent of a middle finger, though Martinez couldn't have known that. "Understood, sir." That evening, Brennan approached him in the mess hall, carrying 2 trays. "Yo, Zix, mind if I sit?" "The seating arrangements are not assigned," Zixtha replied, carefully navigating a spoon toward his mouth with his upper right hand. Human utensils were absurdly inefficient. Brennan dropped into the seat across from him, grinning. "Dude, the way you stonewalled Martinez today was legendary. Nobody talks back to him. I merely provided factual information." "Yeah, that's what made it so good." Brennan attacked his meatloaf with enthusiasm. "You're gonna fit in great." Zixtha considered this. In Krell culture, fitting in meant adhering to strict hierarchical protocols and demonstrating superior competence. Human social dynamics seemed to reward something else entirely, a quality his translator kept rendering as vibes. "I appreciate your assessment, Brennan. However, I am uncertain what metric constitutes fitting in." "Easy. Don't be a dick, watch your buddy's back, and don't take yourself too seriously." Brennan gestured with his fork. "That third one's gonna be your challenge, I think." Over the following weeks, Zixtha discovered that Brennan was distressingly perceptive. The training regimen, designed for bipedal humans with bilateral symmetry, frequently required creative adaptation. Rifle drills became an exercise in determining which hands to use for which functions. Hand-to-hand combat training turned into a philosophical debate about whether four arms constituted an unfair advantage or just an invitation to get hit 4 times as much. Martinez seemed determined to explore that question thoroughly. Recruit Zix, front and center. The sergeant stood in the middle of the training mat, arms crossed. You're going to demonstrate close-quarters combat techniques for the class. Zixtha stepped forward, his combat instincts activating. This was it, a chance to prove his species' martial prowess. Recruit Collins, you're his opponent. Sarah Collins emerged from the formation, all 5'3" of her, looking like she weighed maybe 110 pounds. Zixtha towered over her at 7 feet, his muscle mass easily triple hers. Sir, Zixtha began carefully, perhaps a more evenly matched. Scared recruit. No, sir. Merely concerned about injuring. Collins hit him like a freight train. Zixtha's advanced combat training, his superior reflexes, his forearms, none of it mattered against the hurricane of elbows, knees, and creative profanity that was Sarah Collins. She used his extra arms against him, tangling them, redirecting them, and in one memorable moment, causing him to punch himself in his own mandible. When it was over, Zixtha lay flat on his back, staring at the ceiling, while the other recruits applauded. Martinez's face appeared above him. Lesson for today, people. Evolution gives you 4 arms, the Marine Corps gives you Collins. Any questions? No, sir, the formation chorused. Brennan helped Zixtha to his feet afterward, while Collins high-fived her way through the group. In your defense, Brennan offered, Collins was a state wrestling champion before she enlisted. She does that to everyone. Zixtha's crest feathers hung limp in defeat. The tactical database mentioned nothing about wrestling. Yeah, that's kind of the point. See, here's the thing about humans. We don't really do fair fights. We do winning. Brennan clapped him on the shoulder. But hey, you got up. That's what matters. Collins joined them, barely winded. Not bad, Zix. You lasted longer than Rodriguez did last week. Keep your center of gravity lower next time. She paused, grinning. Also, maybe lead with 2 arms instead of all 4. You're telegraphing like crazy. I will incorporate that feedback, Zixtha managed. The philosophy of getting up became Zixtha's mantra. He got up after 20-mile ruck marches that left his legs burning. He got up after night navigation exercises where he discovered that Krell night vision, while excellent, couldn't compete with thermal imaging goggles and sheer human stubbornness. He got up after Martinez's daily assessments, which ranged from marginally less useless to I've seen training dummies with more initiative. But something shifted around week 4. During a particularly brutal obstacle course run, Zixtha's translator malfunctioned halfway through, leaving him navigating obstacles while his squad mates shouted instructions in untranslated English. He'd gotten stuck on the cargo net, too many arms, not enough coordination, when Brennan climbed up beside him. Zixi, you're overthinking it, Brennan yelled over the wind. 2 hands, that's it. Pretend the other 2 don't exist. The nickname registered somewhere in Zixtha's consciousness, but he was too focused on not falling to process it. He grabbed with just his upper arms, and suddenly the net made sense. He scrambled over the top. There you go, Collins called from below. Move it, Zixi, I'm getting old down here. By the time they crossed the finish line, second to last place, but a finish nonetheless, the name had stuck. Martinez even used it during the debrief. Zix, your upper body strength is adequate. Your coordination is not. Fix it, he paused. But you didn't quit. That counts for something. In the barracks that night, Brennan sprawled on his bunk while Zixtha attempted to repair his translator. You know we're not making fun of you, right? With the nickname. I had not considered it mockery, Zixtha replied, manipulating the delicate components with surprising dexterity. Among my people, name shortening indicates familiarity. It is acceptable. Good, because it's way easier to yell Zixi when someone's about to step on a mine. Collins appeared with a toolkit, dropping it beside him. Here, your upper left hand keeps twitching. Pretty sure you strained something on that rope climb. It is merely, Zixtha paused as she wrapped the joint with practiced efficiency. Thank you, Collins. Sarah, we are past last names at this point. She secured the wrap. And you're welcome. Can't have our alien getting broken before the fun stuff starts. The fun stuff arrived in week 6, the combat simulation. The scenario was simple. A squad-sized element defending a position against overwhelming enemy forces. Live ammunition, exercises with simulated casualties. The instructors played the opposing force, and they played to win. Zixtha found himself in a foxhole with Brennan and Sarah, watching the tree line while explosions bracketed their position. Brennan was on the radio, coordinating with other elements. Sarah methodically fired controlled bursts downrange. "Zix, how's our ammo?" she called out. Zixtha checked their supply, his multiple hands making the inventory quick. 4 magazines remaining for each rifle, 2 grenades. "That's not gonna cut it," Brennan muttered, lowering the radio handset. "They're pushing our flank. We need to reposition or we'll be overrun." An explosion impacted close enough to shower them with dirt. Through the smoke, Zix's superior vision caught movement, 3 instructors advancing with suppressed weapons, using the chaos as cover. "Contact left, 50 meters," he announced, bringing his rifle up. His lower hands steadied the weapon, while his upper hands worked the bolt and reached for a fresh magazine. He fired in controlled bursts, the way Martinez had drilled into them endlessly. "Good eyes," Sarah acknowledged, shifting her fire to support him, but more instructors were flanking right. They were professionals, and this was their training ground. The recruits were outmatched. "We need to move now," Brennan insisted. "Fall back to the secondary position." "Negative," Zixtha said, surprised by his own voice. "If we abandon this position, the entire defensive line collapses. Second and third squads will be exposed." Sarah looked at him. "So what's the play?" Zixtha's tactical training warred with something newer, the strange human doctrine that said impossible odds just meant insufficient creativity. "I advance and draw their attention. You two provide covering fire and move to flank when they commit to engaging me." "That's suicide," Brennan said flatly. "That's the play," Sarah countered. "Do it fast, Zix. Before I remember, we're not actually supposed to die stupid." Zixtha vaulted out of the foxhole before he could reconsider. His forearms gave him a strange, loping gait that covered ground quickly. He fired as he moved, not for accuracy, but for noise and visibility. Every instructor's eye turned toward him, the alien recruit making a frontal assault like an idiot. Behind him, Brennan and Sarah displaced, using his distraction exactly as planned. The instructors opened fire. Paint rounds splattered across Zixtha's vest, his arms, his torso. He kept moving, serpentining between trees, returning fire even as the simulation rounds killed him 3 times over. He crashed through a bush, stumbled, rolled, came up firing. And then Brennan and Sarah hit the instructors from the side. Controlled pairs, proper fire discipline, everything Martinez had taught them. The ambushers became the ambushed. The exercise whistle blew. Martinez materialized from somewhere, surveying the scene with his usual scowl. He looked at Zixtha, who was covered in paint and breathing hard. He looked at Brennan and Sarah, who had just eliminated half the opposing force. Then he looked at the tactical map on his datapad. "Recruit Zix," Martinez said slowly. "That was the stupidest, most reckless, most aggressively moronic move I've seen in 15 years of training exercises." "Yes, sir. It was also the only reason your squad's still in this fight." Martinez almost smiled. "Not bad for a 4-armed walking target. Don't let it go to your head." Later, back in the barracks, Sarah punched him in the shoulder. "That was either really brave or really dumb." Graduation came with unexpected ceremony. Zixtha stood in formation, wearing the same uniform as everyone else, tailored for 4 arms, but otherwise identical. His crest feathers stood at full attention. Brennan stood to his left, Sarah to his right. When they called his name, he stepped forward to receive his insignia. The same eagle, globe, and anchor that every Marine wore, no special designation. No alien qualifier, just Marine. Martinez was there for the handshake. "Don't make me regret this, Zix. I will endeavor to make you only moderately disappointed, sir." This time, Martinez definitely smiled. "You're learning. Now get out of my sight before I remember I'm supposed to maintain professional distance." Outside, under Earth's single sun, Brennan threw an arm around Zixtha's shoulders. Sarah produced a flask from somewhere. "To Zixi," she announced, "the first alien dumb enough to join the Marines." "I will accept that designation," Zixtha replied, taking the flask. The liquid burned worse than coffee, but he'd learned that sometimes the point wasn't pleasure, it was participation. They drank, and Zixtha realized he'd finally solved the mystery of human military effectiveness. It wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their fundamental inability to recognize when something was impossible. They would use an incredibly excessive amount of aggressive determination to make it possible. And somehow, improbably, he'd become part of it. "So," Brennan said, wiping his mouth, "think you can handle a real deployment with us idiots?" Zixtha's crest feathers rose in what he'd learned was the human equivalent of a grin. I believe the correct response is, trust me, bro. Sarah laughed so hard she nearly dropped the flask. Oh, we're keeping him. The celebration lasted another hour. Toasts, terrible jokes, and Brennan's increasingly dramatic reenactments of their worst training moments. By the time they stumbled back to the barracks, Zixtha had learned 17 new Earth profanities and discovered that humans sang horrifically bad when sufficiently drunk. The next morning brought hangovers for the humans and profound confusion for Zixtha, whose biology processed alcohol differently. While Brennan groaned into his pillow and Sarah glared at the overhead lights like they'd personally offended her, Zixtha checked his messages. New orders, all three of them. Brennan, Sarah. He read the screen again, making sure his translator wasn't malfunctioning. We have received deployment assignments. Tell me in like 6 hours, Brennan mumbled. We report in 36 hours. That got their attention. Sarah sat up, wincing. All of us, same assignment. EDIF carrier Valkyrie, 2nd Marine Expeditionary Unit. Zixtha felt something flutter in his chest, anticipation mixed with what he was learning to recognize as anxiety. We're staying together. They spent the next day processing out of Camp Pendleton, updating service records, and attending a brief ceremony where Martinez shook their hands one final time. Don't embarrass me out there, he'd said, which by Martinez standards was practically a declaration of love. The shuttle ride to the orbital transfer station passed in a blur of paperwork and nervous anticipation. Then came the wait, 6 hours in a sterile departure lounge, watching other Marines rotate through on their way to various assignments. Some looked eager, others looked haunted. A few looked like they'd seen too much and were heading home. Finally, their transport was called. The transport shuttle's interior smelled like recycled air, disinfectant, and what Zixtha had learned to identify as nervous human. Brennan kept bouncing his knee, making their entire bench vibrate. Sarah sat perfectly still, eyes closed, but her jaw was clenched tight enough to crack walnuts. You are anxious, Zixtha observed, his translator rendering it with what he hoped was appropriate delicacy. Nah, I'm terrified, Brennan said cheerfully. There's a difference. Anxious is before the test. Terrified is when you realize the test involves actual space combat and possible death. That's weirdly specific, Sarah muttered, not opening her eyes. Their orders had arrived 2 days after graduation. Report to the EDIF carrier Valkyrie, currently in orbit around Mars, for assignment to the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Unit. They'd shipped out within 12 hours, barely enough time to process that they were actually leaving Earth's gravity well. The shuttle pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Approaching the Valkyrie in 5 minutes. First-timers might want to check out the view. Zixtha pressed his face against the viewport, undignified, but he'd learned that humans forgave much in the name of cool stuff, and felt his primary hearts skip a beat. The Valkyrie dominated the view, a kilometer-long beast of angular armor plating and weapon emplacements. Smaller craft swarmed around it like insects, and in the distance, Mars glowed rust-red against the black. Holy shit, Brennan whispered. That's ours. Technically, we belong to it, Sarah said, finally opening her eyes to look. But yeah, that's home now. The docking procedure took another 20 minutes of careful maneuvering, giving Zixtha plenty of time to catalogue the ship's visible armaments. Railgun batteries, missile pods, what looked like experimental energy weapon systems. The humans might lag behind in faster-than-light technology, but they'd compensated by making everything else as lethal as possible. The airlock cycled open, and they floated into the Valkyrie's receiving bay in Zero-G Zixtha's inner ear, or rather, his species equivalent, adjusted quickly, but Brennan immediately caromed off a bulkhead with a yelp. Graceful, Sarah said, arresting her own momentum with practiced ease. Did they not teach you Zero-G at basic? A staff sergeant with arms like cargo cables caught Brennan before he could ricochet again. First time off planet, Marine. Is it that obvious, Staff Sergeant? You're not puking, so you're doing better than most. The Staff Sergeant, his name Tape Red Williams, released Brennan and executed a perfect zero-G turn to face them. His eyes widened slightly at Zixtha. Well, I'll be damned. You're Zix, the Krell everyone's been talking about. Zixtha, Staff Sergeant, the most used the abbreviated form. Outstanding. Welcome aboard the Valkyrie. Captain wants to see all three of you after you stow your gear. Williams gestured toward a hatch. Grab a handhold and follow me. Try not to die before you meet your unit. They navigated through corridors that hummed with power and purpose. The ship was alive with activity. crew members pulling themselves through passages, automated systems whirring, the omnipresent vibration of massive engines. Williams led them to a berthing area where magnetic boots locked them to the deck plating. "Your racks are over there," Williams said, pointing. "Stow your gear, make yourselves pretty, and meet me back here in 15. The briefing room was larger than Zixter expected, with actual gravity provided by rotating sections of the ship. Captain Patricia Owens sat at the head of a conference table reviewing a datapad. She was a compact woman with steel-grey hair and the kind of presence that made even the air seem to stand at attention. "Marines," she said without looking up. "Have a seat." Owens set down her datapad and studied them with eyes that had probably seen things Zixter couldn't imagine. "I'm Captain Owens, commander of 2nd Marine Expeditionary Unit. You three graduated top of your class, which either means you're exceptionally competent or exceptionally good at not getting caught being incompetent." "Ma'am," Sarah said. "Permission to speak, granted. Are we being assigned together deliberately, or is this coincidence?" "Deliberate. The Corps is interested in seeing how integrated units perform under real operational conditions. You three worked well together at Pendleton. We're gambling that translates to combat effectiveness." Owen's gaze settled on Zixter. "You're something of an experiment, Marine. First Krell in the EDIF. How's that feel?" "Heavy with implication, ma'am." "Good answer." Owens almost smiled. "You'll be joining 1st Platoon, Charlie Company. Staff Sergeant Williams is your platoon sergeant. You'll meet your squad leader and team shortly." She stood, and they immediately followed suit. "One more thing. There's another alien graduate joining us. Arrived yesterday. Name's unpronounceable, so everyone calls him Clicks. He's Tharian, an aquatic species, which means he's in a mobility suit most of the time. Play nice." "Ma'am, do we have a mission brief?" Brennan asked. "You'll get briefed when there's something to brief. For now, familiarize yourselves with the ship, meet your unit, and try not to break anything expensive." Dismissed. They found 1st Platoon in the ship's gym, or rather, heard them first. Someone was playing music that consisted primarily of bass and questionable life choices, while a crowd cheered around what appeared to be an arm wrestling competition. "I got 20 on Rodriguez," someone yelled. "You're an idiot, Jackson." Davis is about to snap his arm off. Williams appeared at their shoulder, grinning. "Welcome to organized chaos, Marines. That's your family now." The arm wrestling match ended with Rodriguez's hand slamming into the table and Davis letting out a war whoop that probably violated noise ordinances on 3 planets. The crowd erupted in mixed cheers and groans. "Listen up, degenerates," Williams bellowed, and the noise died instantly. "We got fresh meat. Say hello to Brennan, Collins, and Zix. They're joining 1st Squad." The platoon stared. 30 sets of eyes, various expressions ranging from curious to skeptical. A stocky corporal with a scar bisecting his eyebrow pushed forward. "Great, more fucking boots," he muttered, just loud enough to hear. "Like we didn't have enough problems." "That's Corporal Hayes," Williams said mildly. "He's in 2nd Squad, so you don't have to care about his opinion. Hayes, shut your mouth before I shut it for you." A tall woman with Lieutenant bars stepped forward, hand extended. "Lieutenant Amy Foster, platoon commander. Don't let Hayes poison you. He's bitter because he failed Sergeant 3 times." She shook each of their hands, pausing at Zixter. "4 arms. That's going to be interesting for weapons distribution." "I have been practicing single rifle configurations, ma'am." "Good, because we're not carrying spares." Foster turned back to the group. "Davis, these 3 are yours. Get them integrated." Corporal Jack Davis, the arm wrestling champion, approached with an easy grin that suggested either confidence or insanity. Possibly both. "Well, shit. I get the alien and the 2 cherries who hung out with him. This'll be fun." He clapped Brennan on the shoulder hard enough to stagger him. "I'm your squad leader. That means I'm responsible for keeping you alive and combat effective. You make me look bad, I make your life hell. We clear." "Crystal clear, sir," they chorused. "Good. Come meet the rest of the squad." 1st Squad consisted of Davis, 9 other Marines, and sitting slightly apart from the group in what looked like a mechanical diving suit, Clicks. The Tharian waved with one of his suit's manipulator arms. His actual body was visible through a transparent faceplate. Vaguely humanoid, covered in iridescent scales, with large eyes adapted for deep-water environments. When he spoke, his translator rendered it in a surprisingly deep voice. "Zixter, heard about you at integration training. They say you let a human half your size beat you up." "That is technically accurate," Zixter admitted. "Cool. I got thrown out of a pool during amphibious training because I had an unfair advantage. Apparently, being aquatic is cheating in water. His eyes somehow conveyed a grin. I'm Clicks. Sarah was studying the mobility suit with professional interest. That's a custom rig. Yeah, keeps me hydrated, provides atmosphere, and houses the weapon's interface. Basically, I'm a walking tank that occasionally needs to jump in a bathtub. Clicks rotated one of the suit's arms. Also, I can carry more ammo than anyone else here, so I'm popular during extended ops. Davis cleared his throat. Right, now that everyone's made friends, let's talk business. We train as a unit every day. PT at 0530, weapons drill at 0800, squad tactics at 1000. You keep your gear maintained, your skills sharp, and your mouth shut unless you have something useful to say. He fixed them with a hard stare. This isn't Pendleton. We're on a warship in hostile space. The Vraxians are still pissed about the propaganda thing we did a while back. Pirates are always a problem, and who knows what else is about to start something. We drill because we have to be ready to go from zero to combat in minutes. Does everyone understand? Yes, Corporal, they said. Outstanding. First platoon hits the range in 2 hours. Don't be late. The range was a simulation deck that could project combat environments with disturbing realism. Zixtha found himself in a simulated asteroid field, floating in zero-G, while hostile targets appeared and disappeared among the rocks. His 4 arms gave him an advantage in managing his weapon and maneuvering simultaneously, but the environment was disorienting. Zixi, on your 6, Sarah's voice crackled in his helmet. He twisted, spotted the target, fired. The simulated enemy exploded in a satisfying burst of pixels. Nice shot, Brennan called from somewhere to his left. I got 3 bogies advancing on the LZ, moving to intercept. They worked through the scenario, covering each other's angles, calling out threats. Clicks proved invaluable. His suit sensors could track targets through the asteroid debris better than anyone else's. By the time the simulation ended, they'd eliminated all hostiles with only 2 casualties. Brennan, who'd gotten cocky, and a Marine from 2nd Squad who'd forgotten to check his corners. Davis assembled them afterward, nodding slowly. Not terrible. Collins, good shooting. Brennan, stop trying to be a hero. Heroes get body bags. Zix, your spatial awareness is solid, but you're still thinking like you've got gravity. Adapt faster. He paused. Clicks, you're carrying the squad's heaviest equipment next drill. Let's see if that suit's as good as you claim. Bring it on, Corporal. Over the following weeks, they settled into the rhythm of shipboard life. Zixtha learned to navigate the Valkyrie's corridors in both gravity and zero-G. He discovered that the ship's mess hall served something called coffee cake. That was neither coffee nor cake, but somehow compelling. He participated in the platoon's increasingly creative PT competitions, which included such military essentials as who can do the most pull-ups while someone insults your mother, and zero-G wrestling. Brennan became the platoon's unofficial morale officer, somehow acquiring contraband snacks and maintaining a running commentary on everything. Sarah earned a reputation for ruthless efficiency and a poker face that could bluff anyone out of their credits. Clicks turned out to be a technical genius, constantly tinkering with equipment and making unauthorized improvements that usually worked. They ran drills, boarding actions, ship defense, planetside assaults, hostage rescue, equipment failure scenarios. Lieutenant Foster pushed them hard, and Davis pushed harder. The platoon began to coalesce from a collection of individuals into something more cohesive. Hayes from 2nd Squad remained a problem. He made snide comments about alien integration experiments and questioned whether Zixtha and Clicks could be trusted in combat. Most of the platoon ignored him, but tensions simmered. It came to a head during a hand-to-hand training session. Hayes accidentally hit Zixtha with an elbow during a grappling drill, then did it again during the next rotation. The third time, Zixtha's patience, considerable by Krell standards, ran out. Is there a problem, Corporal? Zixtha asked, his crest feathers rising. No problem, just seems like you can't keep up. Hayes smirked. Maybe 4 arms isn't such an advantage after all. Davis started forward, but Sarah was faster. She stepped between them, her expression flat. Corporal Hayes, you want to fight somebody? Fight me. I don't hit women, Collins. That's convenient because I hit assholes. Come on, let's go. The training mat cleared. Williams appeared from somewhere, arms crossed, watching but not intervening. This was between Marines, and some things needed to be settled. Hayes was bigger, stronger, and had 3 years of experience on Sarah. None of it mattered. She took him apart with the same clinical efficiency she'd used on Zixtha at Pendleton, except this time there was an edge to it. When it was over, Hayes lay on the mat, breathing hard while Sarah stood over him. "We clear now, Corporal?" she asked quietly. "Clear," Hayes wheezed. "Good, because Zix and Clicks are Marines. They're our Marines. You got a problem with that. You got a problem with First Squad. And trust me, you don't want that problem." She helped Hayes to his feet. He accepted the hand, grudgingly respectful. Something shifted in the platoon after that. Hayes wasn't suddenly friendly, but the hostility cooled into mere skepticism. 3 months into their deployment, Lieutenant Foster assembled the platoon in the briefing room. Her expression was grim, and Captain Owen stood behind her with crossed arms. "Listen up," Foster said. "We've got a situation." The chatter died instantly. Vraxian raiders hit a research outpost in the Tessara 319 system. 53 personnel, including civilians. The raiders took hostages and fortified the facility. Negotiations failed. Orbital bombardment would kill the hostages. Foster pulled up a holographic display of the outpost. "That's where we come in. 2nd Marine Expeditionary Unit is tasked with hostage rescue and elimination of hostile forces. 1st Platoon takes point." A murmur ran through the group. Zixtha felt his secondary hearts accelerate, a Krell combat response preparing his body for action. "We ship out in 6 hours," Owen said. "This is what you trained for. Make it count." As the briefing continued, assault plans, equipment loadouts, contingencies, Zixtha caught Brennan's eye. His friend looked scared but determined. Sarah was already calculating, her tactical mind processing the information. Clicks leaned over, his translator barely audible. "First real mission, you nervous?" "Terrified," Zixtha admitted, borrowing Brennan's earlier distinction. "You?" "Same, but hey, at least we're terrified together." Davis stood before them afterward, the squad gathered close. "All right, people, this is real. The training wheels are off. You watch your sectors, you trust your team, and you do not hesitate. We're going to bring those people home. Everyone tracking." "Yes, Corporal." "Good. Now get your gear squared away. We step off in 5 hours, 57 minutes. Move." They moved. In the armory, while checking his weapons for the 3rd time, Zixtha felt Sarah's hand on his upper left shoulder. "You ready for this, Zixie? I am uncertain one can truly be ready for combat, but I am prepared." "Close enough." She smiled, tight but genuine. "We got your back." Brennan joined them, slapping a fresh magazine into his rifle. "Remember what Martinez said. Can you shoot? Can you move? Can you not die stupid?" "The 3rd criterion remains challenging," Zixtha observed. "Yeah, well, we'll figure it out together." The ship's intercom crackled to life. "Prepare for tactical insertion in T-5 hours. This is not a drill. I say again, this is not a drill." Zixtha looked at his friends, his squad, his unit, his brothers and sister in arms. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Just like they'd faced everything else, with questionable judgment, terrible odds, and the kind of stubborn determination that had made humanity a force in the galaxy. Just another day in the Earth Defense Infantry Force. "All right, Marines," Davis's voice cut through his thoughts. "Load 'em up. Time to earn our pay." The squad formed up, weapons ready, faces set with purpose. Through the viewport, stars gleamed cold and distant. Somewhere out there, people needed help, and the Marines were coming.
To be continued.